Hi everyone, here we are for Chapter 1, Main Themes of Microbiology. This is Part 3, the human use of microorganisms. So in this section, we're going to learn about both old and ancient ways, as well as current and new ways that humans are using microorganisms for our own use. You have been using them a lot throughout your life without even realizing it. We're going to talk about how those things are. So the human use of microorganisms, humans have been using microbes for thousands of years. The Iceman Ötzi, he had some microbes in fungi in his pouch that he was probably using for medicinal purposes. For thousands of years, cultures across the world used yeast for the production of breads, wines, beers, cheese, all kinds of food products and things like that that people have used for thousands of years are thanks to microorganisms. So we have this image of some moldy bread that was used by Egyptians thousands of years ago to treat wounds. And it turns out that the mold in bread can produce penicillin if the yeast there is penicillium, and that then can be, of course, therapeutic. So even without knowing what it was that was benefiting, humans were able to use these things as tools to either for medicinal things or for food production. And this is just an image of yeast microscopically, looking at the budding. You can see these little dots on here. Those are called bud scars. And these are yeast. This is yeast called um, uh, Cerevisiae. So we'll look at that as we go through here. So we use microorganisms currently in modern times in terms of biotechnology. And we can use this in industrial ways to make all kinds of different chemicals and things that are used, in industry, things like acetone and those kinds of things. We can also use genetically modified organisms to create new plants and animals, so create plants that are resistant to freezing or plants that are resistant to drought and things like that by adding bacterial genes into those organisms to make them have some particular characteristic that will benefit us. We also, of course, continue to use fermentations and things like that to make beer, alcohol. We still eat bread and cheese and yogurt and kimchi and kombucha and all kinds of things that rely on fermentation. We can also use microorganisms for bioremediation. And so we can introduce particular microorganisms into an environment that has been contaminated with toxic products, like a gas leak, or after some kind of a fire or a chemical leak or whatever that can happen in an industrial way. We can improve that. So I have this link here for talking about bioremediation and a solution to pollution, and I wanted to embed this short video.
Our Earth faces many problems. One of these is how to deal with the dangerous chemicals we produce. But microbes can help us. Bioremediation is the process of using microorganisms to remove or degrade pollutants from the environment. Under the umbrella of bioremediation are different techniques. Confused? Here's an example. Let's look at oil spills. They're huge environmental disasters that we don't really have a viable solution for. They cause such damage to the environment because petroleum is a toxic mix of organic compounds, heavy metals, and hydrocarbons. Add to that rapid dispersal and the breakdown into even more damaging secondary chemicals, and you have a disaster that can cause serious acute and long-term effects. So how can microbes be used to prevent the damage caused? Well, certain microorganisms like Marinobacter are known to break down the harmful chemicals into safer, non-toxic compounds. If left to their own devices, the microbes in the environment would eventually break down the oil. It would just take a long time, as they generally only account for about 1% of the marine microbiome. Microbes are limited from growing into huge numbers by the availability of nutrients and other factors in their environment. The addition of, for example, fertilizer, which contains nitrogen, can remove these limitations, allowing the microbes to increase in numbers and speed up the breakdown. As well as oil spills, bioremediation techniques can be used to clean up acidic mining damage, soils contaminated by heavy metals, and plastic pollution. At the moment, bioremediation techniques are slow, but with more research, it is hoped that we can optimize the techniques and make bioremediation the quickest, most sustainable way to make our planet cleaner.
So that all sounds great. And I mean, who wouldn't want bioremediation to work really well and to benefit us by being able to break down things like from an oil spill or all the toxic stuff that's in a dump or something like that. We're still a long ways from that, but that's an area of research and an area of interest. People are looking uh, at finding microorganisms and developing microorganisms that can break down things like styrofoam or plastic or some of these so-called forever chemicals because they're not safe in the environment, and they're not good for us to have around for long periods. So that's a huge area, really interesting area. It's not really, we won't really talk too much about that anymore in the semester, but just wanted you to be aware of it and something that you should kind of be thinking about. So that brings us to the end of this section. So you should be able to name 3 products produced by genetically modified organisms that benefit humans, and at least 1 method for which microbes are used for bioremediation. So that's the end of this one, and we'll talk again soon.